ever. At the tender age of 7, violently abused by my father, enslaved to domestic drudgery by my mother. With hope and prayers I played it cool, but the abuse continued, regardless of how well I did in school. When nigger and wog was flung at me, I simply used to laugh. Until Raymond Ricardo, my school friend, said, "They're taking the piss." That's a fact. From then on, I fought in school nearly every day and had to watch out for knife-wielding racist gangs as I traveled from A to B. Feeling robbed of my childhood and still wetting the bed, nerve tablets were prescribed for me. As I questioned the absence of Mammy's healing herb tea, then there was the hernia operation in consequence of lifting things far too heavy for me. Today, those nerve tablets are now called antidepressants, you see. Light shone through the darkness at the age of 12 as I became lead singer of a band called Tracks. Got the job after singing a poem in a cappella in the English literature class. With singing and dancing, my emotions were unshelved, keeping a balance through what was a living hell. I never looked forward to going home from school. I'd rather be in a boarding house, no matter how strict the rules. Running away was the constant thought of the day, but not knowing where to go, I felt compelled to stay. I refused to call the police. I refused to tell people in school. I refused to tell my relatives, but Mommy was no fool. And my siblings knew the excruciating times that I was going through. As if that wasn't enough, I also had to suffer the sight and sound of my father's regular violent beatings of my mother, our beautiful, intelligent mother, who sometimes overdosed on aspirin, a cry for help undercover. To help her indeed I was determined to do, but only mere words came out instead, as I encouraged Ma to leave Pa as I would as soon as I could. As an academic pupil, I thought I'd escape via university, but the old man even thwarted that after killing my school life at Christmas before I took my exams in June. More rejection came as I was ejected from the house that I could never ever call a home. And as I descended further into darkness, paradise was just a memory as hell became my home. Yes, I have to say it again. As I descended further into darkness, paradise was just a memory as hell became my home. My first flat. In my first flat at Camberwell Green, where I lived from age 16, like a man in a boat lost at sea, needing guidance from someone much older than me. But filled with anger, pride and pain, asking for help would be insane. I knew Mammy would be there for me, more than anyone else could ever be. But prompted by my pride, I chose bad instead of good. Without a job, it was inevitable. The rent would be in arrears. Hence my descent into robbery, to wipe away my fears. I said, do it. I'll only do it just the once, simply to pay the bill. Then I'd get right back on track, using my legal skills. But one robbery turned to two, and two turned into three, and as three turned into four, the only thing that could stop me would be the slam of the prison door. My partner in crime was Titus, a bad boy from approved school. Oh yeah, he was bad alright, when he crossed on me like a fool. We ended up at the Old Bailey, in the infamous court number 1. After waiting in custody for 7 painful months, of each day I counted every one. Though found guilty, being of previous good character, I was allowed to go free. As Titus was recalled to Borstal, a young man I'd never see again, as he descended into the belly of the beast, accumulating over 30 years in jail. After the pain of prison, I said I'd never, ever return again, only to find myself reoffending and going to Borstal instead. I thought of Titus, but as I knew him to be a grass, he could no more be a friend. More robberies followed that led to my imprisonment at HMP Maidstone in Kent. My fraudulent acts grew and grew. I was a violent gangster, part of a criminal crew. A thing I thought I'd never, ever do. There were Jaguar, Vanden Plas, and fancy cars, made-to-measure suits, regular shopping on Bond Street and throughout the West End, partying every night at the club, regardless of the expense. Relaxed, I listened to music at my leisure, while singing and songwriting continued to be my pleasure. With so many ladies I went to bed. Memories to cherish in heart and head. Oh yes, I've carried a gun. Oh yes, I've carried a knife. But I thank God to this very day, I never, ever took a life. dishonesty and violence. In HMP Maidstone, I said I'd renounce dishonesty and violence if God granted me parole. And as soon as it was granted, commenced the cleansing of my soul. What was I going to do with so many options in view? The answer swiftly came when, as a victim of a burglary game, all my treasured possessions were taken away, save the Bible and the ganja herb that laid amongst the Psalms that kept me calm while keeping evil away. It wasn't easy. In relapse, I stole and defrauded a little, but by the grace of God, I got back on track with some ganja I bought to sell and to get some money back. And as the business rapidly grew, I became shepherd and head of a ganja crew. Sprinkled ganja in my ital stew. Ganja tea was my morning brew. Ganja cakes and pudding for the chosen few. I was strictly ital through and through, surrounded by gangsters, reggae stars and DJs too, with their crew. The chalice we lit burned an ounce at a time, and as we gave thanks and praises to the Most High Yah, with conscious reasoning on biblical lines. If we smoked 16 ounces, half or 3/4, or all the bill was mine. With 2 restaurants and a nightclub, photography business, pool and electronic games venture, Child record label too, including the ganja business, I was doing very well, thank you. I had a collector's Mercedes, a BMW, and more cars parked outside. The house in which I lived with 3 women, at which men would marvel and sigh. How do you do it? And I would simply say, honesty and money paved the way, resulting in peace of mind and integrity. Blessed love, love, light, and healing to all my brothers and sisters out there. Yes, give thanks and praise to the Most High. Give thanks and praise for Blessed Radio, SLR, Galaxy, Station FM, Conscious Radio, and all these radios out there serving our community. Yes, give thanks to the big man himself, Nate, the control at the station, and his son, a great assistant, great, good character. Right now, we're in Drug Addiction Awareness Week, and because of Drug Addiction Awareness Week, I brought a brother here with me today called Darren, but it seems as though Darren decided to slip away. He just disappeared, so I'm left here at the controls, and I give thanks and praise to the Most High. We have to unite. That was an example of the opposite to unity. The man came here with me and he just disappeared. But anyway, we're going to continue with Drug Addiction Awareness Week. Now, as you heard a few tracks from my album here just now, entitled it's called Ex-Gangster's Odyssey, this album. You just heard a track called Dishonesty and Violence. Dishonesty and violence, that goes along with drug and alcohol addiction. You know, and although at the time I wasn't an addict, at the time of that experience, of that song that I wrote there when I was granted parole, but little did I know I was on the road to drug and alcohol addiction, and I didn't even know it. You know, it was, let me say this, it was in prison that I experienced taking a thing they called acid for the first time. I took it twice and I said I'd never take it again. You know, those things made you hallucinate. You know, and when you're confined in a small space like that, you know, one gets tempted to try things like drugs. You know, and the fact of the matter is that, like I said, you know, I didn't know that I was on the road to drug and alcohol addiction, but the fact was that these experiences that I had in prison, being introduced to other drugs and so forth, was a catalyst that propelled me down that road unwittingly. I was not aware at the time. And so I can say this to you, my brothers and sisters, that our sons and daughters who are ending up in jails, you know, a lot of them, that's where they pick up the habit, you know, and they come out and they become cocaine addicts, crack addicts, heroin addicts, and all sorts of different types of addiction that's out there. You know, the thing is that I wrote a book called From Rehab to Life, which is being launched this Saturday, the 13th, you know, at 7 p.m. on MediaNet Live, you know, and MediaNet Live on YouTube and MediaNet Live on Facebook, and which is another part of this drug addiction awareness week. Drug Addiction Awareness Week is very important, brothers and sisters, because it's a plague in our society. When I say it's important to be aware of it because according to statistics, 75% of us know someone or know someone who is a drug addict. This is a thing that's very much kept in denial within families and so on because of the shame, you know, and because of the distress, because of the baffling circumstances. Suddenly their son or daughter was okay one day, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're not eating, they're not sleeping, they're not washing, and they're angry and they're very snappy, and the whole character and whole personality has changed, and they keep lying, coming up with all sorts of stories to either get money, or they start stealing things from out the house, and all these sorts of things start happening, or they start going out there stealing, robbing, defrauding, getting violent in any way to get money to feed the habit. Brothers and sisters, you know, all I can say is that you know, I spent 20 years, over 20 years in the bottomless pit of drug and alcohol addiction. And I was reduced to homelessness. You know, I was also reduced to being completely financially broke. I was also reduced to being estranged from all my family and all my friends. I lived reclusively. You know, my life became one that was dictated by drugs and alcohol, and that was crack cocaine and alcohol. They became my God. I stopped praying, and also I stopped attending to my responsibilities to myself and to others. Everything was for cocaine, crack, and alcohol, which left me in a state of despair. I was absolutely overcome with pain, and I became very sensitive to the world, and blaming the world for my condition, and blaming this, and blaming the past, and so on. And it didn't help. It just made me have more excuses to carry on abusing myself with drugs and alcohol. You know, one of the most painful things was the actual abandonment of my children during addiction.
no more attending to my responsibilities there. The conscious pain of that only drove me to take more drugs and alcohol as though that was the solution. Took it to numb the pain, but it just made matters worse. I was running away from my feelings. This is what drug addicts do and alcoholics do. They running away from their feelings, and rather than face up to certain realities and sit with them and explore their feelings and find out, why am I feeling this way honestly, and come to a place of honesty with themselves. Addicts tend to run away into the world of drugs, a world of illusions, a world of numbness, a world where one becomes removed from reality and living in a world of fantasy, hoping that everything will be better tomorrow. And we reap what we sow. As long as I kept taking drugs, I sank lower and lower and lower and lower. And I'll just read you a little passage from my book here, From Rehab to Life. And this is chapter 17, where it says, I asked God why had he allowed me to get arrested again. How could my arrest be of any help to me, as I heard the crack pipe calling me from the 17th floor? That was the beginning of my recovery, but I didn't know it at the time. People saw me as the gangster who fell from grace, but I didn't consider myself a gangster. Yes, brothers and sisters, that was at my rock bottom when I became homeless, and when nighttime came, I suddenly woke up to the realization that I didn't have a home to go to, and I refused to go to the homeless persons unit out of pride and so forth. And decision time came, and what happened was simply a voice said, well, it's either the park bench or the crack house, which was in a tower block. And I decided to go into the crack house rather than sleep on a park bench. And that's where I resided for a while, and with a stream of people constantly in and out, in and out, in and out, day and night. I resided there for 5 days until the proprietor said to me, haven't I got a home to go to? And I just simply looked at him and said, I'm head of security around here, and if anyone misbehaves themselves, well, I'm going to take care of the matter, so don't worry about it. And he just went back to smoking his crack, and so did I. But the fact of the matter was that I lied. I was homeless, too ashamed to admit it. I used to go out from the crack house just to go to steal and to come back as quickly as possible to attend to the crack pipe and to drink gallons of alcohol, whether it was champagne, whether it was cognac or vodka, whatever that I managed to steal that day. My money had gone. My money was exhausted after not working for about umpteen years, not doing anything. I exhausted everything. And anyway, the fact of the matter was that I was returning to that crack house, and I was just about to step through the door eagerly, anxiously, couldn't wait to get that crack, on the pipe to smoke it. And there were police at the entrance, and they searched my black bin bags, which were filled with stolen goods, which led to my arrest. And I could hear that crack pipe calling me from the 17th floor. Come, smoke me, warm me up. Come, let me take you to a better place that never, ever, ever materialized. Brothers and sisters, and I asked God, why? But little did I know that that was a blessing in disguise, because from that prison sentence, I managed to get honest. I asked God to help me. An addict forgets to pray. I remember I forgot to pray. I prayed regularly. But now I didn't have any crack in my system, no alcohol in prison. I asked God for help. I prayed. I said, God, help me. And help came immediately. And through that process, I ended up going to AA meetings in the prison and eventually into rehab, where I went into therapy, got honest with myself, offloaded stuff that goes back from my childhood, from infancy, and so that I could leave the place a lot lighter than when I came in, because I got to realize that a lot of past experiences accumulated over the years, violent abuse as a child and living on my own from the age of 16, having to fend for myself and feeling rejected by my parents and stuff like that. Well, not my mother, but my father anyway, and so forth. All these things, those pains of life eventually caused so much pain that I resorted to self-medicate. But like I said, that arrest was a blessing in disguise, because that's where I began to climb up from the bottomless pit of drug and alcohol addiction, from lies to truth, and from darkness to light.
Head. Oh yes, I've carried a gun. Oh yes, I've carried a knife. But I thank God to this very day, I never, ever took a life. Dishonesty and violence. In HMP Maidstone, I said I'd renounce dishonesty and violence if God granted me parole. And
from the album Ex-Gangsta's Odyssey, all sales of this album goes to From Rehab to Life Foundation, steering the community away from drug and alcohol addiction, violence, and crime.
Soon as it was granted, commenced the cleansing of my soul. What was I going to do with so many options in view? The answer swiftly came when, as a victim of a burglary game, all my treasured possessions were taken away, save the Bible and the ganja herb that laid amongst the Psalms that kept me calm while keeping evil away. It wasn't easy. In relapse, I stole and defrauded a little, but by the grace of God, I got back on track with some ganja I bought to sell and to get some money back. And as the business rapidly grew, I became shepherd and head of a ganja crew. Sprinkled ganja in my ital stew. Ganja tea was my morning brew. Ganja cakes and pudding for the chosen few. I was strictly ital through and through. Surrounded by gangsters, reggae stars and DJs too, with their crew. The chalice we lit burned an ounce at a time. And as we gave thanks and praises to the Most High Yah, with conscious reasoning on biblical lines, If we smoke 16 ounces, half or 3/4, or all the bill was mine. With 2 restaurants and a nightclub, photography business, pool and electronic games venture, Child record label too, including the ganja business. I was doing very well, thank you. I had a collector's Mercedes, a BMW, and more cars parked outside. The house in which I lived with 3 women, at which men would marvel and sigh. How do you do it? And I would simply say, honesty and money paved the way, resulting in peace of mind and integrity. For ganja. Police stops and searches were a regular thing, with or without wearing bling. No matter what vehicle we were driving, on foot it was just the same. As we played the duck and diving game, with cloak and dagger and the gangster's swagger. We suffered persecution for the herb that heals the nation, keeping the peace in recreation, and gave us economic salvation from sus laws and police brutalization. They even took my collector's Mercedes away and said you'll never get it back again, even if I took them to court. And the judge ruled in my favor. They'd never give me back that car, 'cause they knew what I did for a living. It was their time to take, and mine for the giving. Things got even worse, more blasé, as police corruption grew. I was jailed for 18 months for possession of ganja you couldn't chew or see, weighing less than 1/4 gram in reality. Like so many brothers in that game, for the healing of the nation in Jah name, a martyr for ganja I became. Martyr for ganja. They'll have to pay. As the money grew and grew, philanthropy was part of it too. My house was open to all but a few. Protecting people, investing in others with something to do. Got real busy making music at Easy Street with star artists, creating songs, creating beats with live instruments that took it to the place that commences with the drum and bass, with rhythm and lead coming into play, keyboards and brass section with so much to say, as lead vocals and harmony led the way. Rico was phenomenal on the trombone. Angus from Aswad was extraordinary on drums. Huey Isachar, a bass superstar. Sugar Minott vocals really sweetened the place. The voices of the Heptones, Trevor Hartley and Winston Fergus flew at a melodious and passionate pace. I laid on the ganja, food and drinks, cabs to ferry artists from A to B, and paid them cash accordingly. In a thick marijuana mist, we produced reggae you couldn't resist, like Kind Man, Visions, and Oja, to name but a few. Suddenly, Engineer Eddie called me to the phone. Heard my girl Makita say my front door was chopped down that day. I stood silent with nothing to say. Kept cool and carried on recording till the session was done. Then went to the spot to witness my losses from jealous people, my trials and crosses. With their guile and greed, they never found the holy herb, the ganja breed. That was there in big supply, but it never caught their eye. Over 250,000 in sound equipment, vinyl, master tapes, and clothes were gone. That feeling in the gut didn't feel like fun. And as vengeful thoughts came my way, I heard the voice of God Almighty say, "Leave it to me, son. Put the posse and the gun and the knife away. You did no wrong, and they shall surely pay." Depression. I said, depression. When depression came, I didn't see. The past in my life had caught up with me. The violent abuse I suffered as a child. My uni education that had been denied. So many things I'd suppressed inside. With nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. In a pitch black tunnel with no light in sight. Depression came like a thief in the night. Don't know if it came from the left or the right. But in denial, I put up a fight. With coke and alcohol abuse to make things right. My appetite for business and money was gone. Life became devoid of fun. A good woman was needed, but I couldn't find none. My chances were 1,000,000,000,000 to 1. As suicidal thoughts came along, it took much more than just being strong against a thing so forceful, not so easy to overcome. Alcohol and cocaine, they were the enemy and not my friends. But way back then, I didn't comprehend, as they anesthetized the pain, anger and torment. To forget the years of betrayal from family and friends, and women who came for financial gain. Massive burglaries I suffered again and again, feeling like an outcast with 1,000,000 friends. Committing murder.
Greetings, blessed love. Who's calling?
Great show.
Bless up.
Yeah, Jammers, yeah?
Yeah.
Great work, you know.
Yes. Big up DJ Jammers, the great DJ in the community. You know, raising up the esteem of our community, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Blessed love, brother. How are you?
Don't let me fall off my chair, you know. Yeah, you're great to be tuning in, and I'd like to commend you for keeping up the good name of Brother Doug. You really find the voice as well.
I'm honored, brother. Absolutely, by God's grace.
Yeah. So, I've been listening to the show, and I'm just wondering if you're aware that somebody's behaviour is changing and it's suspected through like drug addiction. What kind of steps can you take?
Well, if their behavior is changing, the first thing, the step I would take is to ask them what's the matter, ask them what's wrong. Try to get them to admit what's going on in them, because
Right. Sorry, I've just got a call I've got to take. Can I call back in 5 minutes?
okay, brother. Okay,
Okay,
brother.
okay,
Blessed
no problem.
love.
Respect.
Blessed love in every aspect.
Don't worry about it. You've got Sister Margaret calling in.
Yes, brothers and sisters, we're in Drug Addiction Awareness Week, and and it's happening in our homes. Our sons and daughters some of them are on drugs, and some of us don't know, or we're playing a blind eye to it, hoping that things pass and it's a phase they're going through. But believe you me, that's a slippery slope, and we cannot afford to let our sons and daughters slip. It's best to nip it in the bud, uproot it while it's still just a little plant. Don't let it grow into a big tree that you can't uproot, because, drug addiction is a plague on our society, brothers and sisters. Blessed love. Blessed love. Who's on the line, please?
Again, apologies for earlier. I tried to get in. I couldn't get through, and as soon as I got through, I had another call that to answer.
Okay, brother.
Yeah. So back to the question I was asking you: what if somebody's behaviour changes? What steps?
Well, I would go to the person, like, imagine it was my son. I would say, well, what's the matter? Why are you behaving in this way? They could be angry all the time, or they could be not eating, or their hygiene has gone astray, or it could be it could be a number of things. It could be that they've become very sloth, don't want to get up in the morning, don't want to work, don't want to do anything. Or they could be expressing signs of depression,
Right.
and so on. And or they may be, and that could mean that they don't say anything, they don't talk, they've switched onto silent mode. And it's for me to ask them, what's wrong? How are you feeling? And to get them to open up themselves. And normally, because the first step always begins with admitting that there's something wrong. As long as they do not admit that there's anything wrong, then it's not possible to help them. Absolutely, they have to recognize and admit that they have a problem, and at least we've got something to work with, because we need honesty to work with. Without that, we're just going around in circles, brother.
Right. And if somebody's sort of now are aware they've got a problem, what steps can they take?
Well, from you admit you've got a problem, then the steps to take is to start, there's different steps you can take. You could go into rehab. If you don't have the money, you can go in our social services, go to your doctor, get your doctor to refer you to social services to finance a place for you in rehab. That's one way. Another way is we could start going to AA meetings or NA meetings. If you're an alcoholic or an alcohol problem, then you go to Alcoholics Anonymous. If you've got a drug problem, you go to NA, Narcotics Anonymous, where people meet together at many different meetings all over London. A lot of them are in church halls, and a lot of them are in community centers. Some of the meetings are held in schools and hospitals as well. And this is where one gets clean. One starts to clean up, because one meets people who are 10 years, 20 years clean and sober, who lost their jobs, who lost their homes, who lost their families, who lost their minds, who lost their spirit, and now they're a whole person again. They've got their job back, they've got another home, they've got another wife, or reunited with their wife and children, and so forth. And most of all, they found the higher power in their life, God in their life. I do believe that when we descend into that bottomless pit of drug addiction, it's a way of finding God. It's a way. God has a way of getting close to us when we're at our worst. When we're when we're at the rock bottom, so to speak. Well, that's not. I know that's how I recovered, because when the pain got too much to bear, I said, God help me. Because it never occurred to me to ask God for help. And that ought to be the first port of call for help. So God help me. What shall I do? Shall I go into rehab? Shall I go to NA meetings? Shall I go and seek advice from alcohol and drugs agencies and of all the options that there are for me? But at the end of the day, we have to get honest. Without it, there's no recovery. And the thing is, with drug addicts and alcoholics, it's a lack of love of God and a lack of love of self, and basically it also comes from anger, and it comes from so many different places. It comes from trauma, going way back. I've met people who are addicts and alcoholics, and they can trace it back to when they were children, and they were either abused violently or sexually abused, or that sort of stuff, or didn't get much to eat and wore rags and things like that, and they weren't looked after or cared for or loved in any way. And these children are subject to a condition that propels them into a world of addiction. I wouldn't say that it happens to all children, but it does to many of us. And so therefore parents have to beware and to ask their children, how are you feeling? Because most addicts don't know how they feel. They'll all confess to the fact that when they were at home, their parents never were concerned about how they were feeling. They never asked them how they were feeling. And a lot of them, if you gave them a feeling chart and asked them to describe what thing that they're feeling, is it anxiety, is it fear, is it depression, is it doubt or whatever, they can't really describe what they're feeling. They can't categorize it, and so yes, and it's getting in touch with our feelings once again instead of running away from it by taking drugs in order to do so.
Right.
Yes, brother.
What does rehab mean? Because someone doesn't know. What happens in rehab? What is it? Rehab.
Well,
but we're not sure what rehab is.
Well, rehab is a place where you have to go through a discipline, which is basically when you go into rehab. Well, I'll take from my personal experience. When I went into rehab, I went to rehab straight from prison, because I didn't trust myself to go out into the community without going into rehab first, because every time I left prison, I always used to go to the off license, buy a bottle of champagne, and after I drank that, I ended up in a crack house, and from the crack house I was back on the street committing crime to get more crack. And I said no, so I was honest enough on that occasion to ask the prison drug and alcohol worker to accompany me to the rehab to make sure I got there safe, which he did, God bless him. His name was Michael. And once I got to the rehab, I was asked to what was in those black bin liners, and in fact there were a lot of prison clubber in there, and which are all brand new stuff, prison shirts, jeans, and T-shirts and all that with the HMP logo on them, because I was told you could get 70 pounds for a shirt and 120 pounds or more for a pair of jeans with the prison logo on it. And so I told the counselor, oh, these things come from the prison, and I'm going to sell them because I need some money, and I'm going to keep some for myself. And she looked at me and she said, her name was Muriel, and she said to me, you're being dishonest. You've been dishonest, and to recover, you have to be honest, and you'll have to return all these things to the prison, And so, which I laughed, but But that's what happened, and I realized that in rehab, yes, I had to get honest, and not only that, also the phone was cut off. You wasn't allowed to use any phone, not allowed to have your mobile phone for at least a month or two.
Wow.
And also we had to attend all these different therapy sessions, group therapy, where we'd all share our experiences and how we came to be there and so on. And also we were given chores, like cleaning chores, so you have to clean the toilets or clean the bathroom, or you clean the hallways and things like that, get into rhythm again, because a lot of addicts, they've lost the ability to have any order in their life. So that was a way of getting order and self-discipline back into our lives again. And you're given 3 meals a day, because addicts don't eat 3 meals a day, and eat fresh fruit and things like that to nourish the body and get some nutrition in the system, and to detoxify the body as well, which fruits and vegetables, they're very good at detoxifying our body. But yes, and rehab is a process where we're appointed a counselor who is our personal counselor, and my personal counselor, his name was Charles. He said to me, I'm not your dad, and if you want to leave, you don't wait till night time and climb over the 6-foot wide wall. You can walk out through the reception area at any time that you please, and so I said, well, thank you very much. So rehab was just a way of becoming humble. And you have to write your life story, which you read in front of your peers there, and that process, during that process, we're also encouraged to do at least 3 AA meetings or NA meetings a week, and where we were introduced to the 12 steps, the 12 steps of recovery, the 12 steps of NA, 12 steps of AA, which the first step is that we admitted that we were powerless over drugs and alcohol, and that our lives had become unmanageable. So that's where we start from, with admittance. It's like, that's why it's a good thing to admit to people, if you're not feeling well, tell them, I'm not feeling well. Because, I've learned that when we cover up our feelings, we keep pretending that we're all right, we're always okay, and we're going through hell and all this and that. That sort of thing causes us to descend into drug and alcohol addiction, when we keep denying the truth about the way we feel. So it's very important to be honest about how we're feeling inside, and not to just hold it down, so to speak, because holding it down could cause you to end up running to the off license to hold it down more, or end up running to the crack man or the coke man to get something to hold it down more, which in fact all it does, it doesn't hold it down. It just these drugs simply separate ourselves from our true self, separate ourselves from God, and the thing that I loved about recovery is that the 12 steps is that God is the ultimate authority, in Narcotics Anonymous and in Alcoholics Anonymous. God is the ultimate authority, and that's the higher power through which, we recover. Anything less than that is short-lived, Absolutely. I mean, there are some people who are atheists and say they don't believe in God, but they've managed to stop taking drugs or drinking alcohol because of the fellowship that they encounter in the rooms of AA and NA, and the support, and the sponsors that are there to help sponsor them even on a daily basis, through phone calls and meetings and so on and so forth. But their recovery, depending on the meetings and depending on human power rather than God power, they end up white knuckling a recovery. They're still angry inside, and they're still clenching their fists, and you know what I'm saying, and still short-tempered. And you find the ones who've reconnected with God Almighty, they're more peaceful, they're calmer, and stuff like that. And it's a different recovery. It's like a Rolls-Royce recovery compared to the other one, which would be like a very bumpy recovery without God in the equation. Yes, brother.
You're having a book launch on Saturday. I've never heard of an online book launch before. How is it going to work?
Well, yes, I never heard of an online book launch, but what gave me the idea was when I attended our great good brother Dougie's celebration of his life in the MediaNet Live TV studios. I thought, wow, well, something, yes, we could do an online launch, because the publishers decided that they weren't going to publish the book until after the lockdown. And then they changed their mind and said, no, we're going to publish it during lockdown. And I said, well, how am I going to have a proper launch, and lo and behold, I says, well, look, we can use this studio here to launch, yes, it's only by the grace of God. So that's how the online book launch came about, brother.
Right, and how's it going to work? So what's going to happen? What's the schedule? When's it going to be?
I beg your pardon?
How's it going? What's the procedure?
I can't.
Are people going to be able to buy the books?
Yes, people can buy the book. They can buy the book online through Amazon, yes. And when the shops open up, they can go into any bookshop and ask for the book. And if they don't have it in stock, the shop will order them a copy, which they'll get in a couple days.
Right.
Yes, indeed. And I must say it's a book that ought to be in all the schools out there. Children need to read books like this, and adults too, because it shows adults how to be better parents by not being, like the parents that maybe I had to have in my life as a child. I don't regret my parents, and no, I wouldn't change anything, because it's made me to what I am today. I didn't enjoy my life with my mother and father in England from the age of 7, but all the experiences that I went through, all the pain I went through, I'd say it's worth it, because it's put me in a place today, together with all the drug and alcoholic addiction I went through and the violence and crime I went through. It's all enabled me and empowered me and enriched me to be in a position today to help others, which I wouldn't have been able to do had I not experienced these things. Absolutely, brother.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Saturday.
Your voice is getting a bit distorted. I can hardly hear you, brother.
Can you hear me better now?
That's better. That's more like
Yeah, I'm just wondering, so if people want to watch the online book launch, where do they go to find you?
Well, they go to MediaNet Live Facebook or MediaNet Live YouTube.
Right.
Yes, brother. And
well, I know you've got probably some other callers, and you've got some more information that you want to get across. So I just want to wish you all the success on Saturday, and keep up the fabulous work that you're doing, and also the blessed team as well to keep up the work that they're doing.
Thank you, brother, and God bless you with your work. Give you strength to continue, and long may you continue, brother. You're making a difference. I know that, brother.
Thank you.
Blessed love.
I'll have to, after lockdown, I have to come down and visit you at the studio as well.
Absolutely. Look forward to that. You must come in as often as you can, brother. We need you.
Respect every time.
In every aspect, brother. Blessed love.
So we link up differently as well, yeah? Thank you.
Yes, brother. You too, brother.
Keep up the great work.
More love. Yes, brothers and sisters. Here we are, on Drug Addiction Awareness Week, which a lot of people don't know about, but it's something that we need to be aware of. And there's a lot of drug addicts out there who need support, who need love, who need to be shown a bit of compassion, who need to be shown, a bit of care, a bit of kindness, who need to be comforted. Drug addicts are highly and overly sensitive, and have feelings of insecurity and so forth, which causes drug addicts to run to drugs and alcohol in order not to feel that way. People take drugs, a lot of children even, youngsters as well as adults take drugs and alcohol to enable them to fit in. They feel like as though they can fit in when they're on the drugs. And when they haven't got the drugs in their system, they become fearful and find communicating with others very, very difficult because of all the feelings that they're feeling, which they can't even describe. I myself, I remember, I always considered myself to be a courageous man and so on, and not afraid of this, not afraid of that, yet, taking drugs and alcohol led me to a place where all of a sudden I was afraid to leave my house without having at least a drink in my system. I got to a place where the moment I opened my eyes, instead of saying my prayers like I used to do, I reached out for the bottle or for the can, which I had close by the bed always, so that I could just drown myself in alcohol back to sleep again. I'd reached the point where I basically didn't want to live anymore. I didn't want to be part of this world anymore. And thank God it's not like that today. And all it took was for me to ask for help. I asked God for help. So anybody out there struggling with drug addiction, alcoholism, please just ask for help. Ask for help. A family member or even, anyone. It could even be a stranger. The stranger might just know which way to direct you. But we have to confess. We have to release the truth, in order to recover, brothers and sisters. We have to admit the truth. Well, we're here, and my mind goes back to the brother who came with me to the studio today to talk on Drug Addiction Awareness Day, and I gave him a copy of my book, and next thing I knew, I also gave him a copy of my album, Ex-Gangster's Odyssey, from which you've been hearing some of the tracks from it, and he said he's going to the bathroom, like he soon come, and suddenly we're ready to go on air. He's not around. I called him. I saw the bathroom door open. I looked in there thinking he may have collapsed in there. No, the bathroom was empty. The man had evacuated the building, brothers and sisters. And so, the brother, I can only say, is still living in some fear of some kind, lost his confidence or whatever. I don't know what it was. Only he knows. And this is it. Had he told me, well, he's feeling this way or that way, we could have handled the situation, but instead of speaking his truth, he chose to run. And that's what drug addicts do. I hope to God that he's not still taking drugs on the quiet and pretending that he's sober when he isn't, clean from drugs. I just hope that he's arrived home safe, or wherever he's going safe. I hope God gives him the strength, to not behave in that manner, because it was shocking. I mean, really and truly, I didn't expect that from him. And he has a big story in recovery, and which I hoped he'd have shared with us all today, but it wasn't to be due to his fear of the unknown. I don't know what he feared.
I know what you fear.
Yes, brother.
The spirit
Not
of
it.
religion. Dear.
Aye, aye, aye. Greetings, people. Yo, there. So, Mr. Man, pass the book, bro. Pass the book, mate.
Yes, bro.
You know what I mean? So me with the book, and it look pretty, innit?
Yes, nice production. Well
Yeah,
finished.
we'll talk about the book in a little while. This book, yeah, I just jumped in, yeah. The reason why I come I'm a book, you know.
Yes, well, you can have that one.
There's something just drop out of it, though. Yeah, got some things in it, though.
Yeah, I just marked certain pages, but it's all right. Continue.
Yeah, cool. Right. This book here, yeah. I'd like to actually do a whole show on the book instead of me just doing just a quick jump in and thing, because I think a book like this, I haven't read the book. I just get the book a minute ago. I think it deserves a little bit more than a quick thing. Right. I'm going to ask you quickly before we go back into the... Oh, we've got a lady calling in at 7:30.
Okay.
To give us some update of what you're talking about, because she actually works with people who are in rehab and pretending she's going to give you some information of where they can go and what they can do.
Yes, indeed. That's what we need.
To get out of this...
Out of the madness, out of the pain, the torture, torment.
Right, the book. From Rehab to Life. Yeah. Why you write the book?
I wrote the book, basically, it started off as a biog, just a small biog for the album, which is also entitled From Rehab to Life, which hasn't been released yet. And but I just kept writing until it turned into a book instead. Yeah, it's just the spirit of the Most High took over.
Caller.
Yes, brother. Greetings.
Greetings.
Yes, greetings, brother Supreme, DJ Supreme at that.
Yeah, how you doing, Tamara?
Well, I'm doing good, King Supreme. How about you?
No, I'm okay, and I'm really taken back by your story of your life and what's actually going on from in your life, and even today the challenges that you've had, and you still, just go through with the adversities that you're facing. Well, I mean, you just spoke of a brother that came in to do a show and he's just exited.
Yes.
And running away from talking about his issues.
Yes.
But
Yes,
I'm
indeed.
listening to you and hear all what's happened to you, gone through. I just visualize a movie, a film. I just think it's so it's so unusual that we don't hear a story of a person coming out of drug addiction. We just see their demise.
Yes,
And
brother.
that kind of negativity of a person's demise is what people kind of thrive on.
Aha.
Just to put in the media and the news. But yourself, who's gone through it, written the book, I've got to salute you for what you're actually doing.
Yes, brother. Thank you for that. It's only by
Because like you said, you've had the adversity that you're publishing, your book's being published in a time where it's COVID, and then you decided to take, look at it, all right, you know what, I'm going to put it online. So you've turned all the adversities around, which, I have to salute you, because some of us would have just given up.
Yes, brother. I mean, to say I could have just given up just now and says, well, I'm not doing the show without the brother Darren who came to to speak to us on this show today.
Yeah.
But it's only by God's grace, brother. You know, everything, all my strength, all my determination, all the courage I have, all the inspiration I have, every breath I have, you know, every intention I have, it all comes from the Most High. I'm nothing without the Most High. And from we're connected with our Creator, brother, everything else just follows on after that. I don't have to worry about money or whether I've got a woman or not, or where I'm going to live or what I'm going to eat or what. You know, from I put the Most High first, you know, love of self becomes easy, you know, and love of humanity, you know, becomes a natural and easy thing to do, you know, even no matter how many knocks we may get along the way, you know, because you know, we live loving lives and honest lives and clean and sober lives, you know, there's people who are just there to, how could I say, there's some people who are there to upset the apple cart, you know, there are people who are just destructive, you know. Angry people can only spread more anger. That's why it's good to get rid of our anger, because once we're going around angry, that's all we can do is contaminate others with it by what we say and by what we do. And we who are recovering addicts, you know, we thought we'd handle our anger with alcohol and drugs, which only ended up causing us to commit suicide in a very slow manner. Like you said, you see them just descend and go down until they go to the grave. You know, I wasn't too far away from the grave, brother. I got down to the basement, and the next step would have been under the ground itself. But it's only by, you know, crying out to God for help, you know, help came. It's only by getting honest, you know, with myself, you know, and being prepared to change, being ready to start all over again, you know, without thinking, well, I've got to cling to my friends, you know, who are all drinking and taking drugs and who are all committing crime and being violent. You know, when you've been in that company for decades, it's not easy to separate yourself from that company. Blessed love. There's our brother Natty is going to come in here.
Supreme.
DJ Supreme, are you still there?
Who is he? Supreme. Yo. Is he there? Is he not there? Oh, he's over here.
Oh, blessed love. DJ Supreme.
Yes.
How are you?
Yeah. Well, I'm to the show and tell me that this struggle with
Who's
I
crying?
just had flashbacks to the 80s that it was the CIA, because I was in New York at the time. It was the CIA that actually started putting crack out on the street.
Supreme,
Because, yeah,
I got a question for you, yeah?
okay.
Have you had any experience with anybody who had a drug addiction, and how did it affect you?
Well, I'm going to tell you one thing that I've noticed, and recently, I didn't know this, and there's two people that have come to mind. Actually, as I'm thinking, there's three people, and what I noticed, and a lot of people always kind of beat me up when I talk about ganja and weed, but what I notice is when some of them are taking skunk.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed when I'm around them, they're okay, and then after they've had a smoke, they get very paranoid, and the accusations start coming out. And I turned around and I thought the person was joking, but they were accusing me of something. And I said, well, why would I travel all this way to come and help you move all your furniture, do all these things, and then you're saying I'm after you? What I'm, you know, it was very kind of scary because I thought, what? How can the person's behaviour just change like that? But I didn't realise that he was smoking until he went out on the balcony, and he went on the balcony. I didn't know what he'd done, but I realised that he was smoking skunk. And then I noticed his whole behaviour change, and that I found scary. Because, you know, sometimes I dismissed it, but it happened. It's happened on more than one occasion.
Okay. Right. The reason why I ask you this, yeah, because there's some of us who's got people and children who lives in our house, family members, yeah, and you got no idea that they're on drugs because you got no idea what signs to look for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how it affects you. Now, in saying this, it's like saying, well, now you've said what you've said, there might be somebody listening and say, hold on a minute. It's true, you know, because when my son comes home from school, he's all right. But then later on in the afternoon, he's moving on a bit shady. It could be your partner that he's all right, and then 1 minute he's moving on shady. But sometimes, because we're in the box, we don't notice it. If you're in a room or doing something continually with people, you don't notice the change. Sometimes it takes somebody from the outside to give you a wake-up call. So even saying that, we might have people around us that are addicted to drugs, yeah? And because we haven't stopped and really realised, hold on a minute, it's true, you know, because he wasn't like this before this lockdown thing started. Now this lockdown thing started, I've realised he's getting a bit more moody. He's keeping himself in his room. He's a bit more quiet. Is he on drugs, or is it the thing affecting him? You understand? Because it affects people in different ways, and some people do get miserable and aggressive, not physically but verbally, when they are addicted to drugs, especially when they're coming down or they can't get it. So the person might think, oh, he's always picking on me. But maybe they're not picking on you. Maybe it's the side effect of them not having the drug, making them go on, so. You know, because nobody's looking at that.
I've also had, because I do my radio show as well, and I've also had people call in and said that they smoke skunk because it works out cheaper than medication, you know. And they said that it's the best thing they've ever had. And the feeling that they get when they smoke, they can't tell me what it is, but they just said it takes away the pain and it just makes them feel a certain way.
Okay.
And they just admitted that, you know, if they went to the doctors and said that they had anxiety and depression, and they just said that they're left with the stigma. So rather than go through all a route like that, they said they just smoke their skunk, they feel better, and they just move on. And nobody, you know, as they said, they'd done an article, I think it's in The Guardian or one of them broadsheet papers, and they talked about functioning drug addicts, so that people can function but still be taking drugs. You know, they can have, and that's what I was going to ask, speak to Tamara to say, that Coke originally was the champagne drug.
That's
drug,
right.
the lifestyle of the rich and famous, and that crack was a derivative of cocaine.
That was the poor man
on
version.
The street, which actually is a quicker buzz, but more addictive. This is what I was told. And there's a book. I'm downstairs at the moment, and I was going to pull out this book and reason about. And this book is about gangs, and they talk about the Yardie gangs coming, or the so-called Yardies, I should say, that came from Jamaica that was selling ganja. But when they were heard, they were saying that they got introduced to selling coke and crack, and they could earn double and triple and quadruple the money that they were selling ganja for. You know, and you know, if you, when I read the stories of the gangs, I mean, they're talking about Italians, Greeks, all. This book is a gentleman from the Evening Standard, and he wrote about all the gangs and how things are actually filtered down to the street. You know, so it's very interesting when they said, well, they just keep, they name everything yardies, you know, but, you know, the one thing that they said, I'm sorry for straying, is that they say crime is organized, but the yardies are the most disorganized, so they can't really capture them because they're just disorganized, and not in a bad way, but it's not organized crime. Whereas they, you know, in the book, the gentleman saying is most gangs are organized, you know. But yeah, so yeah, that's my little thing to throw into the pot. You know?
Yes, brother. Thank you for that, brother. And the fact of the matter is that, yes, greed took over, you know, the days of ganja, you know, and the ganja plane landed and all that, and everyone was happy and used to give thanks and praise to the Most High and smoke up the chalice and recite the Psalms and with reason together about love, about unity, about, you know, about biblical characters, about the Most High and plans that we're going to do, you know, to help our community and help each other to, you know, build ourselves up into a better position. Suddenly, you know, that unity, a man could trust another man with 10,000, 50,000 pounds, 100,000 pounds to go on an errand and he'd come back. But then when that coke came in, the cocaine, it fragmented everything. It splintered everything.
Yeah.
The unity evaporated. Greed took over. A man was ready to murder another man just for a 10-pound bone because he wants to smoke it, and he pulls his gun out. I know these true stories, and pulls his gun out, and no one touched this, only me. And he prepared to fire a shot. If anybody touched that last bit of crack there, he's going to smoke it. And I remember that particular brother, for example, he felt so shame after he'd realizing how low he'd become, thinking he was a man of great, you know, high esteem and so on, to see how a little bit of crack turned him into a potential murderer for a 10-pound piece of crack. You know, he managed to stop immediately, and that's a good thing. You know, if you can get honest very early, then you can stop early. But most people go into denial and make excuses, and most of them go on to the bitter end. But also the fact is, you spoke about the skunk that they're smoking out there today. So they replaced the ganja with coke, and what they did about the ganja now, that good sensimelia, the healing herb, they replaced that with skunk, which is fed with, it's fed on heroin, and it's, you know, it has no sunlight, you know, it doesn't even grow in earth or anything like that. So it's artificial lights, and it's fed with heroin and fed with cocaine and fed with amphetamines, and it's fed with other drugs, designer drugs or whatever they are, so that this plant grows into something in the lab which is very addictive. And when you don't have it, I've seen it in my son, and he becomes desperate. You know, he needs to come down, and you know, he not needs to come down, he thinks he needs to go back up rather, and he gets ratty and impatient and irritable. And I said, son, stop smoking that thing. Please stop smoking it. It's no good for you. Stop it, you know. But this is addiction, you see. From you get hooked. You know, it takes a lot of courage. It takes more than manpower to get where one has to get help from God Himself. You know, we have to ask God for help. You know, there's people who rely on manpower, and like I said, manpower is not good enough, because what these people do, some of them just simply, how could you say, they say they've stopped, but they haven't really stopped. And you get some people, they've stopped, but but they're very angry and they're still in a lot of pain and so on and so forth. You know, their mind is still the same. We have to change our whole thinking. We have to get humble to the truth, humble to our Creator, and always willing and ready to ask for help, you know, and admit the truth. That's what sets us free. You know, there's no escape from it. If something is causing me to feel dependent upon it, that I can't live without it, I have to talk about it. Yeah, it doesn't make me weak to admit it. It makes me strong. You know, and from that position I can grow even stronger. And also it helps to mix with people who don't take these things. Because if you're mixing with people who are smoking the skunk every day or crack or coke all the time, if you're a teetotaler, you know, you're guaranteed sooner or later you're going to end up succumbing to one or all of these drugs. You know, so the thing is to prevention is better than cure. Avoiding that sort of company is of paramount importance. The only thing is sometimes that company happens to be members of your family. But even so, we have to have our boundaries. You know, we have to have our boundaries. I've got a son addicted, you know, he just... He's a slave to cocaine, and he thinks he's not that bad because he doesn't smoke crack. All he does is snort cocaine and drink alcohol. I told him, look, it's just as bad as crack. You know, people have different things. They say, oh, this one isn't as bad as that. But they're all bad. They're all terrible. You know, they all lead to the grave, you know, and institutions. You know what I mean? Whether it be the mental institutions or jail or the cemetery. That's where these drugs lead us to. You know, these drugs take us away from our responsibilities to our families. You know, these drugs, you know, we stop feeding our children. Instead, we take the food money and go and buy crack with it and things like that. You know, you've got a lot of children suffering in homes out there because there's no food in the house, but the mom and dad are smoking crack, you know, while there's no food to eat. You know, and it's horrendous. And what does that child end up doing? That child probably ends up being a crack dealer or something like that. You know, end up on the what they call it, the county lines or whatever. You know, or they end up a drug addict themselves. You know, the fact of the matter is that some people say, well, they need money to get out of a situation, to rise above the poverty that we're in. But selling crack isn't the way to do it. You know, I know a lot of people would disagree with me who have sold lots of crack and made millions of pounds, and they, as far as they're concerned, they're doing very well, thank you. Well, they've never thought about the devastation that they've left behind in the community. You know, and we say that we love our people. You know, we love our people, and we go feed our people poison, you know, to raise ourselves into a better financial position and to gain material things and all that. You know, along the way, we could have caused thousands of people to lose their homes in the process, lose their wives, you know, and their husbands, lose their children, lose their morals, lose their principles. A lot of people who's taking the crack and taking cocaine, you know, even alcohol, you know, a lot of them end up men who are heterosexual, turned into homosexual, women, you know, who are heterosexual turning into lesbians. You know, also people who never stole in their lives start stealing. People who are honest start lying, and it just goes on and on. People who weren't violent suddenly become violent.
Can I quickly jump in there because I don't know what time your show finishes?
Yeah, yes, 8 o'clock, brother.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I just also want to just put into the equation that there are medical drugs that people can get hooked on, and the so-called legal, and I would mention Prozac for depression, and there's such thing as people that have morphine as a painkiller, but just to get away from the pain. You know, there are people who have certain conditions, they get hooked on morphine. People are getting hooked on Prozac. So these are kind of I don't know if to use the word legal highs, but they're
Well, they are.
legally being given this, but the people are actually turning into addicts because they can't function without taking the morphine or taking the Prozac or taking a
Absolutely.
pill to take away the depression.
Yes, brother. There are untold people who are under the cosh, so to
Yeah.
speak, who are subject to pharmaceutical drugs on a daily basis, as a means of thinking that they're doing good because at least they're not taking crack or cocaine or even drinking alcohol. But when it comes to it, they are addicts themselves,
Yeah.
and the fact that and the consequences are just the same. Many of them end
Yeah.
up, they just go downhill basically
Yeah.
because that's now become the center of their lives. They live for that, and that's about it. They
Yeah.
live to use and use to live, basically. And so we find ourselves in a situation because it's legal. It encourages them to continue
Yeah.
down that road.
Yeah.
Yes, brother. Blessed
So
love.
even I don't know. Even
Which one? This?
hello.
Yes, brother.
Yeah,
Uh,
but even when you talk about
hold on,
drugs
brother
and drug,
DJ. We got another one on the line here, brother. I'm sorry
another
about that.
one.
Yes. Hello? Okay, brother DJ.
Yeah.
DJ Supreme.
Yeah.
I don't know if this other caller, they're coming through. Are they through? They'll have to call back. Yes, brother.
But
Unfortunately, we didn't get through.
because it's very interesting when we say drugs and drug awareness and addiction and habits. And when you look on people who, let's say, someone is obese, but they're
Yes.
hooked on sugar, they're hooked on junk food. You get what I mean? So
Oh, yes.
now we can look on people and say he's a drug addict, but people are addicted to stuff that's no good for their health, and you can see, you look at them and their physical body is in a state because they're eating junk food or they're eating they've got they're diabetic and they're overweight. So
Yes.
when we talk about drugs, I would use the word addiction and habits. And how do we get rid of a habit? I don't know how many days they say it takes a certain amount of days for a person to break a habit. But it's almost like, rest in peace, Brother Dougie, when you used to talk about sugar. And then the sugar is a thing where, let's say, if you have a donut, that you get hooked on the sweetness, that after you have one donut, you want another one and another one. And then you want a cup of tea with 6 sugars because you just want to taste that syrupy taste of the sugar. You get what I mean? And then
Yes,
you
brother.
realize that the sugar is just destroying all the parts of the body.
Yes,
So,
brother. Breaking us
Hold on,
down.
Supreme. Greetings.
Greeting, hi. My name is Margret Thorli. I'm the director of HR Training Professional. We are a company based in Enfield,
Okay.
and I'm an author. And I'm very passionate about working with young people and families. So I was just calling in regarding about the show you got about the drugs you're talking about.
Okay. What's your contribution to this debate?
Well, my contribution towards the debate is I have listened to the gentleman who was talking about the drugs, about the journey, about the yardie and the thing. But my question is, what happens to our young children who are out there in the streets who do not believe in God? Because he was saying, like praying. Is that the children praying for themselves, or is that the parent praying for their children? So I just want to know, how do we reach out to those children who are out in the street?
Well, I would say that these children, they live at home, no doubt. The children you're talking about, or wherever they're living, whoever they're living under, they need to be introduced to God. They need to be introduced to prayer. They need to be introduced to be encouraged into discussions about life, about God, about creation, and get to know about
Yeah, but
these.
some of them are into Egyptology. Some of them's gone beyond the Bible. Some of them don't even believe in the Bible. So how do we gonna reach them?
Well, the fact of the matter is that we can only reach those who are open, who have got an open mind. We cannot stop people from closing their minds to certain truths. So it's only the ones who have an open mind, because in recovery, to recover, we have to be honest, open-minded, and willing, which is a willingness to do the right thing, which most addicts are not willing to do the right thing. Tell them to do anything else but to give up taking their drugs, whatever they are.
All right, Sister Margaret. Hi.
Yes.
Have you had any experience with anybody who's addicted to drugs, and how did you handle it?
I really haven't had that kind of experience, but however, working with families who have children such as that, it's a huge problem, because those kids are out there, they are hurting, and some of them want to stop, but they're very, very frightened. So how do we go out there and reach out to those children? And yes, God is massive. We believe in God, but there are times for us to get those children to listen to the word of God. We need to go out there, reach out to them, speak to them, and the changes are not going to happen overnight at all. It's something that we need to work as a unit and reach out to the children. And as you got them in, you've touched that child's life, then you begin to tell them about God. But while they're out there doing their thing, they're not going to listen to you. So this is my contribution.
Supreme is still there. Supreme.
Hello?
Oh, it's not there.
Hello.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, Supreme.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I am here.
Oh, cool.
The ladies asked a question there. Could you repeat that last bit of the question again?
You hear that, Supreme?
I can hear part of what
What she's saying is that basically there's no outlet for them, basically. So she wants to know, how do you get them to leave the drugs world and come to God? That's what she's saying.
Well, I kind of believe in what Tamara's saying. What I would say that any faith that you latch onto can help you, because you've got to believe in something. You know, sometimes when you believe in something and you have a faith, it takes you away from the dysfunctional things that are going on. But like Margaret said, when we've got youngsters, the problem that we've got with our youngsters is that the media, they're attacked by the media, and there was this portrayal of the gang lifestyle, and a certain lifestyle is more fashionable. So a lot of the youngsters are drawn to gang lifestyle because it seems fashionable. You've got the latest cars, the latest clothes. You've got all the girls. You've got also you're also introducing to young males the ego, being the alpha male. There's a lot of things that we're looking at, and then also our youngsters, if they're grown up in an environment where it's dysfunctional, they also start to look at other, let's say, models to latch onto, because they're in a dysfunctional relationship, possibly with their father or their mother. So they've gone and latched onto a gang lifestyle where they think they're part of a so-called family. So are youngsters out there, and you know what I tend to find? No disrespect, this is just me, that most of the youngsters that I've seen that are a little bit really wild are under care in the social services, and there's no parenting around them, and they're just ruthless, and they're just out on the street bullying and antagonizing the other youngsters that possibly have foundation in the house. So they would be looking at those youngsters as they're geeks and they're just easy prey to be bullied, But I don't know if I'm still coming through.
Yes, sister. Yes, thank you for that, brother Supreme. It's just a word for Sister Margret, is it? Sister Margret.
Mm-hmm.
Are you in the drug and alcohol recovery organization of any kind, or what has brought you?
No, we are a training provider, so we work a lot with women. And I had a meeting which was called Advice Future for our young children. Because what I realized, a lot of our young children have been groomed. All right, they've been groomed to sell drugs. And some of them are really young, innocent children. And some of the parents do not know that their children have been groomed. And the next thing you know, they moved to county line. So for us, my passion is to make sure that the parent knows to look for and to protect their children. Because you got to also remember, a lot of our young children out there, they're not all in a children's home. They are actually come from a really care, loving home. But sometimes situation arises from coming from school, coming home. And majority of them, they get groomed by some of the drug dealers. And the grooming starts as simple as applicative. Do you see? So, what I wanted to see is most of those children is finding a very tough situation. Not because they want to be there, but because of a situation has happened. Because they've been groomed.
Yes, well,
and our children can start as young as 8 years old, or even younger. They have a brother who is selling drugs, and they drag the young brother in to do the same as them. So not all children they are from a children's home, and they're out in the street. Some of them, they're coming from a very good home. And we need to work and find a way to reach out to those children and support the parents. That's what my organization does.
Well, absolutely, and we'd love to work with you. I mean, I founded the charity called From Rehab to Life Foundation, and I'd be most grateful if I could get your number from, as a matter of fact, I'll give your number out on air or your contact details on air, but we'd definitely like to work with you because we're definitely working on parenting classes. We're also looking to communicate with the schools, to identify vulnerable children and to clear them away, to steer them away from the grooming that you just spoke about and so forth. I mean to say we need to work together on this. Also the parents also need to work with us on that. So it's a process that's going to take a collective effort. It can't be achieved by just one organization alone. So we're from Rehab to Life Foundation. We'd love to work with you. As a matter of fact, we have plans to for dealing with a lot of alcoholics and addicts during this COVID-19. We know that addiction has risen, as well as violence and crime and so forth, has risen during this period. and we're looking to help the parents by giving them these care packages that are designed to support them into recovery, rather than just giving them some food to eat, but giving them things that will help them to recover, so they know where to go for help, and other things to inspire them to let go of the drugs and let God in their life once again, because this is where it is. We lack godliness in our lives. The children have to be taught to pray again. And the thing, the matter is that there's people out there who don't want to change, and we cannot change those. But we're appealing, we're raising the awareness so that people who are willing to change will come to us and say that they want help, and we'll help those. But we can't help those who don't want to be helped. We can't make the donkey or the horse drink the water if they don't want to drink it. But we're just here letting people know what we're doing, and if they need help, come to us, we can help them. We're looking for them by making them aware, by holding workshops and different lessons like parenting classes, for example, or yoga and meditation, nutrition classes, bereavement counseling, grief counseling, all that sort of thing, which we can use to help to introduce them to a higher power, to God our Creator, which we can also introduce them into a life of honesty, self-honesty, self-love, which they can then, they can convert that into living clean and sober lives, and I know there's young people out there who are doing very well without any drugs, without any crime in their lives, and so on. And we also need these young men and women to come forward to give their testimonies, to encourage the other young ones to follow their lead, rather than to be discouraged and descend into the pit of crime and violence and drug and alcohol addiction.
I hear what you're saying to me. Now, for example, you say those people who do not want to be helped.
Yes.
So what do? We just leave them?
Well, the thing is, we tell them. I mean, we're here to say, well, look, listen, drug and alcohol consummation is a dangerous business, which can lead you down a slippery slope into poverty and crime and violence, which can lead you into a place where you're isolated from all the community because of your habit. You cannot function in society anymore. But if they don't want to listen, we can't force them to come to our workshops. We can't force them to come to any therapies or to come and get counseling or to come and get mentoring. We have to recognize and respect the fact that God gave us free will, and that free will cannot be interfered with. If once you interfere with that free will, then it's no longer the right. It's no longer in tune with the laws of nature. The laws of nature are there clearly. You can go left or you can go right, but you have to pay the price. There's consequences. So all we can tell them, well, these are the consequences, and if you wish to go along that road, well, so be it. But we hope and we pray, and we'll be praying for you, because we pray for people like that, and know that we're always there to welcome you with open arms. But that's the best we can do with these people who refuse to change. We can't make them change. It starts with themselves. The power is within them. We only awaken that power within them to change themselves, to change their thinking, thereby changing their behavior and so on, which leads them to a clean and sober, a prosperous life, a positive life.
I've heard what you're saying. A lot of our young people do want to come out, but it's difficult for them to come out. A lot of our young people, it's not that they don't want to change, but they are scared to change because they're not sure about the future.
Well,
and a lot of our young people, they are in drugs or selling drugs because maybe they are the only provider to the family. And I see that a lot. I see that happen a lot. So those families, those children, they need a lot of love, a lot of support. And it's not that they don't want to change, but they are very scared.
Like I said, there are those who want to change, and there are those who don't want to change. There are people who steal and want to continue stealing. And there are people who steal and say, well, I don't want to be doing this anymore. I've been, the shame and the regret that goes around it and so on, and the fear of getting caught, we can help them. Like I said, I'd love to help. We'd love to help every youngster out there. But all we can do is let them know, listen, we're here to help you. We love you. We'd love to help you to love yourself. So that you become strong enough, to help another, in the situation that you were once in, But I understand the emotional side. Oh, we've got to save them all. But the fact of the matter is that we cannot force people into things, and there's no trickery. We can't trick them into recovery neither. They unfortunately, the fact is, even children have to reach a rock bottom where they say, no, I can't do this anymore. I can't take this anymore. I'd like to change my ways. This is how it happens. Otherwise, it only takes a miracle. Apart from that bar of miracle, there are children who all of a sudden they'll just say, yes, you're right. But yes, we can talk to them. We're here to talk to them, tell them of the dangers, and to see whether they are willing to ask for help. And once they ask for help, then we'll help them. But we cannot help someone who doesn't want to be helped. It's like I put in food to someone's mouth and they won't eat it. We can't force them to eat it. It's although they're starving, like people who suffer from anorexia, and they just starve themselves to death, thinking that they're fat when they're just skin and bones. Some people feel, like you said, there's no other way to survive but to sell drugs. I mean, we're here to show them that you can survive without drugs. The money may be less, but at least have a plan. If you're 20 years of age, have a 5-year plan. See where we'd like to be when you're 25. Look, these are these career paths here. We'll get you a mentor, advisors to help you, to the choices that you make, and plan your life so that, yes, in 5 years' time, you will be in this position. You will have a certain type of job paying you, so much money per year, and so on and so. We can help them in that way. Or maybe they have to go back to education, and so on and so forth. But it has to come from them. They have to be ready. They actually have to be ready to change, because a lot of us are willing to change. They say they want to change, but they're not ready. And I've seen a lot of, this is why in rehab you may have 30 people in a rehab center, yet there's only 1 or 2 or 3 out of that 30 might change, and sometimes none of them change. This is the statistics in this. The recovery rate is very low. It's not very high. Most people go on to the bitter end, unfortunately. But, the children, this is what we're more concerned about, the children, because they're more receptive. They haven't been that corrupted as someone who's gone into their 40s, 50s, or whatever. They're easier to change their thinking and to change their ways. But however, if they're not willing to do so, if they're willing to do so, we can work with that. But there's a point of willingness where you have to become ready. And so we'll work with them until they become ready. But if they're not willing, there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing whatsoever, except show them the examples of others who've changed their ways and let that be an attraction onto them. Sometimes they need to see other youngsters like themselves living, prosperous lives without having to sell crack or cocaine and that sort of thing in order to survive. And furthermore, I say to you about the woman or the parents who have a child who's selling drugs to pay the rent and put food on the table and so forth and so forth. Now, if there weren't no drugs to sell, they would still survive. One way or another, they would survive. Drugs is not the answer, because all drugs does is imprison our other brothers and sisters. It only fragments other homes that were together. So really and truly, just to get food on your table, you end up destroying the lives of, tens or hundreds of people out there, or even thousands of people out there. So that's not really the answer. And a lot of people don't really think it through. And I spoke to a mother. I said, listen, you must stop taking money from your son. Yeah, she says, well, how am I going to pay this and pay that? I said, well, was he always selling drugs? No. Well, how did you survive before that? She survived. She's ate. She was living. She still had a car and things like that. So we can live without this drug selling, like as though selling drugs is the salvation of our souls. It's not. It's the destruction of our souls. The illusion. Pardon? Yes, the illusion that it's going to set us free is an illusion. That's all it is indeed. Yes. Who else is on the line there? Brother Supreme. Okay. Yes, Margaret.
Okay. I
Yes,
hear what you're saying, but I need to go back into the question. One of the parents, you say that she's taking money from her son.
Yes, she's taking money from her son. Yes, and she wasn't always taking money from her son. All these years she was surviving without it. But as soon as she sees a little bit of extra money, all of a sudden, oh yes, that you could always do with a bit of extra money. But I told her that you're losing your spirituality. You're encouraging your son into darkness. Your son could get murdered from selling crack, which happens a lot. Which happens quite often, or end up with some very big jail sentences. I know a guy who got 8 years just for a 10-pound rock of crack. 8 years just for that. And the other pitfalls that go with it. There's no, you can't have a proper relationship with anyone involved with that. It carries an evil spirit, that crack thing, that cocaine thing, an evil spirit that comes to destroy, saying that it's come to help you in your financial difficulties, but in fact it's come to destroy you, separate us from God, separate us from ourselves, separate us from our families, separate us from society, separate us from honesty, separate us from peace of mind, separate us from all the good things and upful things in life that we need to uphold in order to live happy and useful lives. Honest to God.
I'm going to have to go back again. The reason being, did you ever got to speak to the young boy that was selling the drugs and the mum enjoying the money? Did you speak to the young boy, how he felt being in that situation?
I personally didn't speak to him. I thought it was in best interest. He's a big man, 20 odd years of age. I thought, and I was just a stranger. And, in the situation at the time, I felt it was best that if the mother displayed her reluctance not to take any money from him, that would be a signal that she doesn't approve of what he's doing. But from she start taking the money, that means say he's got approval now, so he can, you know, he can do it without any conscience, without worry about even hiding it from his mom anymore, because she knows and she's become part of it. They now become partners in crime, colluding with one another. You know, there was a woman, this is a true story of a woman who begged a social worker, please defend her sons in court, write them glowing reports, which he did so. However, the sons, one was, I think, 14 or 15, and one was 12, 13, something like that. Anyway, they both ended up getting 4 years, and which he hoped that they'd be freed to continue to sell drugs again on the streets. And when the social worker walked with the woman to her car, she had a brand new Mercedes, you know, and for a poor person, well, you got a brand new Mercedes or nearly new. And, you know, she bawled out and said to him, what am I going to do now? How am I going to maintain this car? How am I going to, you know, pay the bills and all this and that? And straight away, the social worker deeply regretted that he helped her in the first place at all, because that woman was clearly bent on just living off of the proceeds of the sale of crack and cocaine and that sort of thing, completely completely separated from the truth that this fast track to money is destroying lives, and destroying their own sons' lives, because as it did, they ended up in prison, you know, and suddenly now no money's coming in. No doubt the car eventually went, and no doubt she's still surviving, she's still eating, she still has a roof over her head, you know, and and so on, and she can actually find other ways of working. We've got to use our minds, we've got intelligence. You know, selling drugs isn't the answer. You know, there's so many things out there we can do. People are afraid of working, of, you know, putting work in and seeing, planting the seed and seeing it grow. All of a sudden we live in a society where we want instant money, you know, like instant coffee and instant mashed potato and instant this, like you go on the computer and you press that button and instantly, you know, you're connected with this and with that. You know, we've got to return to nature and know that things take time. Things grow naturally. There's 24 hours in a day, you know, 365 days in a year. You know, one day at a time. We plant a seed, you know, an honest seed. You know, we've got an ambition. We've got a dream to fulfill. We've got a goal to get to. You know, and we just nurture that seed. You know, we water it. We stay focused. You know, and make sure it gets sunlight and things like that, which is ourselves. We work on ourselves. You know, by doing the right thing for ourselves, the right things will happen. You know, there's no solution in having our sons and daughters committing crime, you know, to support our homes. This is not going to work. It's only going to lead to worse than what it is now. You know, we've got our children killing each other. A lot of it is down to this crack and cocaine businesses going on out there. Much of it, I'd say even most of it, is down to that. You know, and so really and truly, that's not the way to go. And we see all these signs, and yet we go into denial and talk about how am I going to live? Well, we're going to live anyway. You know what I mean? I used to earn whole heap of money every day. I used to earn many thousands a day, many thousands a week. I earned six-figure sums of money. I earned more than that in my lifetime. You know, much more than that. I've been through a whole heap of money. You know something? And now I don't have that money. I'm feeling a lot better in myself. I got more peace of mind. I've got self-esteem. I love God. I love myself. I love my family. I've got time for my family where I didn't have time before, and things like that. These are the things we need in our society in order to unite our community and raise our community to a higher level, where we're respected, in our community and not disrespected.
Right. I'm just coming back in. Now, you say to me, I hear what you're saying, Charles. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, but I'm going to have to bring you back. You said to me that you have a parent program, yeah?
Parenting, yes, with
program.
Yes, the parenting program is with the.
Did you invite any of those women into your parental program so that they could be trained how to become effective
better parents? Absolutely. Well, Brother Dougie, he ran effective parenting as well. I teamed up with him because I was on the same course. I had parenting classes in Crouch Hill in the Brickworks Community Center from last May, and met up with Brother Doug. He was on the same track as well with mental health as well, which is we work with mental health solutions. And we've joined up with the Godwin Lawson Foundations, who are also very strongly involved with strengthening families and communities, with parenting classes as well, thrown into that. And so really, yes, we're here to accommodate mothers and fathers who are going through the difficulties of parenting, to help them to be in a better place with their children so that they can avoid the pitfalls that others have fallen into.
Yeah, I hear you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have spoken as Brother Doug's effective parenting on the radio and also live, when they had it at a Chestnut Community.
Chestnut Community Center, yes.
Yeah, I was also one of the speakers there.
Yes.
So my question to you, because you said you got parental classes going, my question was, did you get any of those parents into joining the class so they can do the training to know how to become effective parenting? That's my question.
Yes, well, there were parents who heard about parenting classes at our workshops, and actually started to attend parenting classes, with the Godwin Lawson Foundation, actually. They were doing it at the Children's Community Center on St. Anne's. Was it the Tricycle? Not the Triangle Community Center on St. Anne's Road. They were also holding some at Northumberland Park as well, but that one closed down. I myself personally attended at the Triangle Community Center for 6 weeks on the parenting course, which is a 12-week course, because we're never too old to learn, and the thing is we help to sharpen each other up. And these parents, they were doing really great until COVID came along, and so the classes have discontinued. And I'm sure they'll resume again as soon as we are allowed to do so. But the parenting classes are very powerful. It starts in the home. We've got to stop blaming governments and 400 years of slavery and this and that. We know all these things play a big part, in the dilemmas that we face today, in the suffering and the degradation and the despair and depression that we're going through today, but it begins at home and with effective parenting, and instead of parents turning a blind eye, they're actually asserting their position as a parent rather than their authority, their position as a parent to parent their children, because we're here to give them the tools in order to do so. And the tools are very simple, basically. Very simple tools. You know, and the basic tool is love. 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 Whatever we deal with it with love. You know, with our children. And with our brothers and sisters.
Have you heard the saying that children bringing up children, and some of those children bringing up children do not know what love is because they've never experienced it at home.
Absolutely.
So how do you overcome that?
How do we work on that?
Yeah.
Well, how we work on that is by simply introducing them to the fact that, look, listen, you know, for example, you know, if you don't love yourself, then why, you know, why are you being so, how could I say, so lost when you could be found? If you don't love yourself, then we talk to them, we say to them, look, listen, you know, there's a God who created us all. We can go down that route, or we don't have to go down that route, but really we have to go down that route. We have to introduce our brothers and sisters to our Creator, because without our Creator, we build the house in vain. You know, going to psychologists and psychiatrists and all that alone means that we're depending on man. And we don't want to depend on man. We have to depend on the power that is greater than ourselves. Introduce them to God, God who created us and created us with all these wonderful gifts. And here we are wasting our gifts and committing immoral acts, dishonest acts, and self-abusive acts, self-destructive acts, which is fed down the line into our children, that finds our children out there selling crack or being violent and committing all sorts of crimes and stuff. So, you know, to get them to love themselves basically is the thing. We have to get them to be honest. We have to have a self-confession. You know, we have to ask them, why don't they love themselves? You know, we have to get them to get in touch with their feelings. You know, it's a process that's it's a gradual process, but it starts with a place of honesty. You know, from we can get them to be honest, we can get them to love themselves, because the honest truth is that all we need is love, because war is not the answer. Only love conquers hate, as the song goes that Marvin Gaye sang. You know, and the thing is that I've got to leave now because we have a DJ here waiting. We've gone over time. And so thank you very much, Margaret. But I'd like to get your phone number so I can talk to you further about exploring how we can work together. You know, yes, with the parenting and with the other issues that we have in our community. You know, that are destructive to us, and we need to eliminate them. You know. So, by God's grace, can I get your number from Natty?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I'll be in touch with you soon. God bless.
All right, then. God bless.
Love, light, and healing. Love you. Love, light, and healing to everybody. Okay, brother. Come in now. Yes, it would be. Well, here we've got a song which it's a poem to music. It's called Ereline, and it's coming from my album Ex-Gangsters Odyssey, with all the proceeds going to From Rehab to Life Foundation, steering the youths away from drug and alcohol addiction, violence, and crime. Is it? The beauty of her mind and skin, and yes, please. Ereline. Ereline was my best friend, my cousin and girlfriend. I never ever had to pretend. We lived close together by the sea, on the beach of Lagon. I loved the beauty of her mind and skin,
and her spirit deep within. That's my Ereline, childhood sweetheart and darling. So when I had to leave, I was sorely grieved as I held her hands that night on the stars and full moonlight. Although I was just a child, I felt like a man inside. I touched her intimately, enthralled by her beauty, knowing I'd soon be missing our touching, cuddling, and kissing. Although we were just children, we knew we were more than just friends, and that loving feeling would never end. Now all I'm left with is the loving memory and scent of her presence, now absent, and the sound of the waves that gently kissed the shore, with that sinking feeling, knowing I'd be seeing her no more. With that sinking feeling, knowing I'd be seeing her no more.